Hare Krishna, good evening. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namini. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pacharini Nirvisesha Sinyavadi Paskachai Dasatari. So this evening we will continue reading the purport of the third verse of Nectar of Instruction. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Utsahan Nisaya Dayat Tat Karma Pravartanat Sangratyarat Sato Vrite Sadbir Bhakti Prasidati. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. Being enthusiastic, endeavoring with confidence, being patient, acting according to the regulative principles, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, hearing and chanting, and remembering Krishna, abandoning the association of non-devotees, and following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. So we were in the purport at yes, I think it was, we read this. We came to endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness. It is called utsaha, or enthusiasm. The devotees find the correct means by which everything can be utilized in the service of the Lord. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Varahyam Uchate. The execution of devotional service is not a matter of idle meditation, but is practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. So, endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha. So Prabhupada says that in every action we should use our intelligence in Krishna consciousness. He describes in this purport what this intelligence is. And he refers to the verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We may remind ourselves that Nectar of Instruction is a summary of Nectar of Devotion. And he refers to the verse Anasaktasya Visayan Yatartam Upayunyatam. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Varahyam Uchate. Papansi Katya Bodhya Hari Sambini Fastunya. Mamuksubi Parichayo Vairahyam Falho Kat Yate. So this verse, Prabhupada says, is intelligence. Considering this verse is intelligence in Krishna consciousness. The verse says when one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accept everything in relationship to Krishna. So not attached to anything, because we know it's not ours, it belongs to Krishna. And because because it belongs to Krishna, it should be used in relation to Krishna in devotional service. So that the verse that one is rightly situated above possessiveness. So this mine in material life is an illusion. Nothing is ours. It belongs to Krishna. And therefore, it should be used in relation to Krishna. So on the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of its relationship to Krishna, it is not as complete in its renunciation. Impersonalists, they say, it's not mine, I reject it, renounce. Devotees say, it's not mine, it's Krishna's, I use it in Krishna's service. So that's practical, very practical. Therefore, Prabhupada says the execution of devotional service is not a matter of idle meditation, but is practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. So it's a different consciousness. A materialist sees a beautiful flower and thinks, yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. An impersonalist sees a beautiful flower and says, yes, it's Maya. I neglect it. A devotee sees a beautiful flower and says, oh, I like to have that flower to offer to my deity, to my Lord. That's different consciousness. And that is the use of the intelligence in Krishna consciousness. Every talent that I have, it's Krishna's talent, given to me, to be used in his service. So every situation that we have, we connect with Krishna. So the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam Satusloka says that, yes, everything which is seen as unrelated to Krishna is Maya. Because everything is related to Krishna. He is the cause of everything, and the cause must be in the effect. So that is endeavoring with Krishna executed with intelligence, and that's utsa, enthusiasm, wanting to use everything in the service of the Lord. That one's whole life, all one's talents, all what is under one's care, I use it in Krishna's service. Because if you don't use it in Krishna's service, it will be used in Maya's service. And then we have heard of these two effects of Maya. Maya covers you and then degrades you. The throwing effect. Throwing effect means you go into the action and reaction of material nature, karma. But if we use everything in Krishna's service, then there is no karma. It said these activities must be executed with patience. Patience is very important. That one should not be impatient in Krishna consciousness. Indeed, this Krishna conscious movement was started single-handedly, and in the beginning there was no response. But because we continue to execute our devotional activities with patience, people gradually began to understand the importance of this movement. And now they are eagerly participating. So Prabhupada is practicing his entire life as a preparation to execute the order of his spiritual master. He took sannyas for that purpose. He was first in Vrindavan, translating the first canto into 3 volumes. And it took a lot of patience because he had to go every time to Delhi to consult with a printer and to get donations for printing the book, but also the paper for printing was not available because of it was a shortage because of after the war it was difficult to get paper. That was not a difficulty. He had to collect funds and then he had to proofread every page because at that time printing press means all the letters were set by hand. Was a very difficult procedure just to print a book. And then it was printed, but then is the proofreading, the proofreading of the book. And then it was printed. Yeah, I had to arrange for an artist to make a design for the cover. On the cover, we have all these Vaikunta planets, and and finally it was printed. And then after that, he made preparations to go to the West, and he was begging for a free passage on the Aladuta from and it was difficult. That I think is Mrs. Murari, forgot her name, but she said to Prabhupada, Swamiji, you will die there. So she didn't want to give him a free ticket. But finally, he convinced her. He got in a free ticket, but then he needed a P form for going to America. And he went to the office to get it. And after 2 months, there was still no response. And then he went to the office and the man refused to give it. And Prabhupada was waiting outside until the big boss came. He spoke with the big boss and finally got the P form. And then he was on the boat, on the Yaladuta, and on the Arabian Sea. He got 2 heart attacks. He was thinking, I'm not going to survive the third one, but then Krishna carried him over the ocean. Then he arrived in Boston. He wrote two poems, Markini Bhagavad Dharma and Prayers at the Lotus Feet of Krishna. When you read this poems, Prabhupada expressed, yeah, you brought me here, but will these people accept Krishna consciousness? Because you remember that his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, said Bon Maharaj in 1933 or something to London to preach, but it was a failure. People would not accept it. And that they didn't want to give up meat eating, intoxication. So Prabhupada was thinking the same may happen here when I go to America. They will say, Swamiji, go home. We cannot do that. So he was praying to the Supreme Lord. And then finally, they got him on a bus to Butler. But I stayed at the son or the family of some acquaintance he had in India, and he stayed there 2 months. He did some, he gave some presentations, but it was very difficult. And then he went back. They went to New York. Was staying in the Bowery. They stole all his possessions. But then finally, things started to happen in 26 Second Avenue. And yes, suddenly people became interested. But it was very difficult. He started single-handedly, he says. And single-handedly means he did everything. He was cooking, he was cleaning, he was doing everything in the beginning. Was very difficult. But finally, he was successful. And then the next 11 years, he spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. But it required a lot of patience. The same happened with the Pandavas. All the difficulties they underwent the exile of 12 years. And it was a very difficult time, and then having to fight the bottle of Coke, etc. And it looked like hopeless, the whole thing. But yes, finally, they were successful. The same with our Krishna consciousness. That every day we chant that, and like we feel like we are not making progress. But things are changing. Like every day you look into the mirror and you see the same face, you don't think it's not changing. But if you look at a picture 20 years ago, then you see a big change. So we are changing, gradually. Our character is changing. We become really pure. Therefore, Prabhupada says, one should not be impatient in discharging devotional service, but should take instructions from the spiritual master and execute them with patience, depending on the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The successful execution of Krishna conscious activities requires both patience and confidence. A newly married girl not only expects offspring from her husband, but she cannot expect to have them immediately after marriage. Of course, as soon as she is married, she can attempt to get a child, but she must surrender to her husband, confident that her child will develop and be born in due time. Similarly, in devotional service, surrender means that one has to become confident. The devotee thinks Avasya Akshibe Krishna. Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. This is called confidence. So Prabhupada speaks about having confident that Krishna will protect me. Krishna says, Nami Bhaktya Panashati, that my devotee will never perish. Sometimes we see things that where devotees are even losing their life, and a little doubt creeps into our mind. But we should be careful with considering this. We see the external side. but not the internal. Yeah, and that Krishna promises Ananya Sintiantamam Yechna Payapashte Tesam Nityam Yuktam Yogikshem Navamyam. Krishna says, I will protect the spiritual advancement my devotee has made, and I will give more and more opportunities to make further advancement. And that because sometimes we think, like Prabhupada, the Pandavas, why are they suffering? They are pure devotees. Why does Krishna let them suffer? That, but this question was also brought up by Bhishmadev. Bhishmadev said, you Pandavas, you did not deserve all this suffering. But yeah, you went to this unfair suffering. That, but Bhishmadev said, this is Krishna's plan. Yes, Krishna has his plan, and we have to go with his plan. That the material world is a place of suffering. We cannot change that. It's not by becoming Krishna consciousness. Everything will become rose and charanamrita. It's not possible in the material world. And Krishna uses his devotees to give the example, to an example in tolerating all these sufferings and engaging and unwavering engaging in devotional service. That's also the previous point. Endeavoring with confidence, endeavoring with enthusiasm. They will never give up service of Krishna because they love Krishna. And this is the 8th verse of Shikshastikam. Aslisya vapatam ratam pipinastamama dakshnamamatu kakarotava yata tata vavitatatam patuna pranatas tusaiva napara. This is the mood of Srimati Radharani, who says, whether you make me broken-hearted by not being present with me, whatever you want to do with me, but I will still love you. And that's a devotee. And Krishna shows the greatness of his devotee. That so can someone read next paragraph, please, which is on the screen now.
Yeah, I can read, Maharaj. As already explained, one should not be idle, but should be very enthusiastic about executing the regulative principles. Tat tat karma pravartatana. Neglect of the regulative principles will destroy devotional service. In this Krishna consciousness movement, there are 4 basic regulative principles: forbidding illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. A devotee must be very enthusiastic about following these principles. If he becomes slack in following any of them, his progress will certainly be checked. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends tat tat karma pravartanat. One must strictly follow the regulative principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. In addition to these 4 prohibitions, yama, there are positive regulative principles, niyama, such as daily chanting of 16 rounds on Japa Mala beads. These regulative activities must be faithfully performed with enthusiasm. This is called tat tat karma pravartana, or varied engagement in devotional service.
Thank you. Of course, this is important, that we must follow these four regulative principles. And this is this is very important because otherwise we cannot bring the mind under control. That mostly due to our past or what we have done before we came to Krishna consciousness. There is still this attraction for doing these activities, especially the illicit sex ones. That because of previous illicit activities, there is still a residue of attraction to that in our subconsciousness, which may come up every moment. But this is part of our training, because our chanting will be effective if we follow these regulative principles. That's if we are not following it, it's like with the chanting we try to purify ourselves, but then we let in again the contamination. It's like trying to put out fire by pouring ghee on it. It's not going. But it depends also. Yeah, we have in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There you have Krishna says that one should make one's mind one's friend and not one's enemy. The mind is one's friend when it's controlled, and it is when it's an enemy when it's uncontrolled. That means if we should never follow the mind without firm control by the intelligence in Krishna consciousness every moment. That whatever suggestions the mind makes, because the mind is like an internal screen, and whatever suggestions the mind makes, we should screen that, and we should screen how can I use this in Krishna consciousness. Is that useful? If not, we neglect. But a breaking of the four regulative principles is concerned, there we put a blockage in the mind. We can say, no, that you cannot do. That because of past behavior, that may come up again. And that is dangerous for Krishna consciousness if we are not executing these regulative principles. Prabhupada writes in the last, this is the last purport of the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto of the Bhagavatam. There, Sutta Goswami says, I will tell you the same thing as I have heard from my spiritual master with great attention, and I will explain it according to my level of realization. And that, so he said, as I heard with rapt attention. That's mostly the issue when we chant, is rapt attention. The mind does something else, there is no rapt attention. Why is that? Prabhupada explains in the purport. To chant with rapt attention, so one should follow these four regulative principles. If that, I want to read the exact translation. Let's go to here, Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto 3, the last verse. Last verse. Yeah. Here. Sutta Swami said, O learned Brahmins. When Sukadev Goswami recited the Bhagavatam there, I heard with rapt attention, and thus by his mercy I learned the Bhagavatam from that great powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned from him, and I've realized it. The first thing, if we hear with rapt attention, then we can remember. So that's very important. This rapt attention. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that no one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, faring, and mating. So that means not following. If you don't follow the regulative principles, then yes, then you cannot be pure in mind, then not be pure in action. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Krishna in person in the pages of the Bhagavatam. That's the power of hearing with right rapt attention, that we can now go back to the nectar of instruction, verse 3. Yeah. Patience, confidence, tat karva pravartanat. Yeah, we were reading this. So, and a devotee must be enthusiastic, follow these principles, that if we become slack in following any of them, the progress will certainly be checked, and that is a point made. Our chanting will have not much effect because we cannot concentrate on the chanting. That our consciousness is not deep. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends that karma pravartanat. One must strictly follow the regulative principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. So they are positive and negative, and they are connected. If we are not following the negative, the positive will not have full effect. That so these regulative principles must be faithfully performed with enthusiasm. Sometimes we lack enthusiasm. Therefore, it's because Maya is too strong. That like our Guru Maharaj said, that one small stick immediately easily can be broken, but many sticks together you cannot break. So if we are in association of devotees, then their enthusiasm will affect our enthusiasm. So that is called that karma, pravartana. That Prabhupada writes, varied engagement in devotional service. So to keep our enthusiasm, we must take care of regularly practicing the 5 most important items of devotional service. That combination will protect our enthusiasm. That if we do these 5 every day, that these 5 most important items of devotional service are mentioned in Nectar of Devotion. So in Nectar of Devotion, the first 64 items of devotional service are mentioned that I think they are mentioned here. There are first 10 items we should do, and then 10 items we should not do. So most important, these items to do is accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. Everything comes from that. The three first are related to the spiritual master. So these are very important instructions what to do. Accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a spiritual master means by everything we do, we consider, will the spiritual master be pleased? So become initiated by the spiritual master, obey the orders of the spiritual master. Then follow the footsteps of great acharyas. That means follow Shastra. Inquire from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. So that's our safety, if we do that always. Being prepared to give everything material for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. That means that we are engaged in devotional service of Krishna. We must be prepared to give up something what we do not like to give up. And also we have to accept something we may not like to accept. That residing in a sacred place like Dwarka or Vrindavan, accepting only what is necessary, or dealing with the material world only as far as necessary. Observing the fast day on Ekadashi, worship sacred trees like the banyan tree. So these instructions are important. That will protect our enthusiasm. If we neglect them, then progress in Krishna consciousness becomes very difficult. Because we can only make progress by the mercy of the spiritual master. By that, Krishna agrees to purify us. So it said in the beginning, if a neophyte devotee observes these above-mentioned 10 principles, surely he will quickly make good advancement in Krishna consciousness. So these are things to do, but then things not to do. That will affect if we don't give these up, these 10 things that's mentioned here, that will hamper our spiritual advancement. One should rigidly give up a company of non-devotees. That will also be discussed further. Sangatyaga, Satovite, Sangatyaga, that give up the company of non-devotees. Sometimes we have to deal with them, but we are not doing what they are doing. We are not taking on their habits. We don't take their association, we give our association. One should not instruct a person who is not desiring of accepting devotional service. So it means we should not instruct someone who does not want to be instructed by us. That will go wrong. We should instruct them or inspire them who are those who are receptive towards devotional service. This is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, one should not share the secret of devotional service with those who are not my devotees, who are not austere, means not following regulative principles and so on. So those who are not receptive, who do not want to be instructed by us, we don't instruct in devotional service. One should not be very enthusiastic about constructing costly temples or monasteries. Krishna does not ask us to do that. Why do we construct temples and so on? Only for one purpose, to get people to come to hear and chant about Krishna, to give them the opportunity to engage in Shravana, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarana. That's the purpose of the temple. One should not try to read too many books, nor should one develop the idea of earning livelihood by lecturing or professionally reciting Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So lecturing should be done for the pleasure of Krishna, for the pleasure of the spiritual master. Not try to read too many books. That Prabhupada said, only his books, that's the essence. That devotees many times read many books, but they didn't really study Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita yet. So this is the essence. We don't need anything more. One should not be neglectful, because Prabhupada gave us everything. There's nothing beyond that we need. Of course, you can read the commentaries of the previous acharyas, that if Prabhupada's purports are not there, but we have full faith in Prabhupada's purports. They are more important than the verses even, because they explain the practical value of the verses. If one reads other books outside of our sampradaya, one will be bewildered. One should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. So it means, you have also to take care of your parents and so on and so on. All these duties must be done, but done in Krishna consciousness. One should not be under the spell of lamentation in loss of jubilation or in gain. So that's not easy sometimes, but if one can do it one is ready for liberation, Krishna says, Yamina vyatatanti te purusham purushasava samu dukkhaskam yam somitat kalpate. One who can tolerate happiness and distress and is equal towards and is ready for liberation, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So one should not disrespect the demigods. We don't worship them, but don't disrespect them either. One should not give unnecessary trouble to any living entity. These are qualities that develop naturally in the heart of a devotee. One should carefully avoid the offenses in the chanting of the holy name or in worshipping in the deity of the temple. So these offenses, these 10 offenses are very important. And then the worshipping the deity in the temple, that the offenses, they are explained hereafter. 44 principles are explained in deity worship. That one should be very tolerant towards blasphemy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Intolerant, yeah. Should very intolerant to the blasphemy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotees. If a devotee is blasphemed, one should try to defend him. That if that's not possible, one should go away. That so these are important principles. These are all regulative principles. The 20 items. And you say the first three are most important. Taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, taking initiation and serving him with respect. But, and then you have also 44 principles for deity worship. But that is another chapter. We go back to the nectar of instruction. That we were following these regulative principles. Hmm. I think. Yeah, that's where we were. Regulative principles. If there are any questions, please.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for a nice class. Whereas the first sentence, where it says that using the intelligence, the enthusiasm in devotional service is, using our intelligence.
Mhm.
The endeavor executed with, the previous paragraph, Maharaj. Yeah. Endeavor executed with intelligence and Krishna consciousness is called utsaha. So or enthusiasm, I didn't understand quite, because usually if we say intelligence means you will be doing the activities properly and nicely, not necessarily enthusiastically. So how to understand this, Maharaj?
Yeah, that let's go to Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, last verse. Evam buddhi parambhutva samstatyatman atmana yai shatramarabho kama rupam durasudam. Knowing myself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjun, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So here it says deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness. What does that mean? This spiritual intelligence is explained in the next chapter, transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge. And Krishna speaks about this transcendental knowledge, and he says in verse 34 that one can get this transcendental knowledge by approaching a spiritual master and inquire from him. So that's the intelligence we are speaking from. This intelligence we get from the scriptures to the spiritual master. And that means simply everything what we do, we should first ask ourselves, is our spiritual master, is he pleased with what I'm going to do? So every endeavor should be done with that confidence. If I follow the instructions of my spiritual master, everything will be auspicious and successful. And that is what's meant in the nectar of instruction here, verse 3, that yes, he says that. It was a little further, I think. No, that we have still to go to. Dat karma vartanat. Patience, we are here. Endeavor, executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, that's following the order of the spiritual master, following Krishna's orders in Bhagavad Gita. And intelligence is explained that Nirbana Krishna Samadhi Yukta Varajam Uchate. Does the intelligence for this refer to? That we use everything everything in the service of Krishna. So that's Utsaha. We want to execute the order of the spiritual master. And that's explained in 241 of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna consciousness means, to exist in Krishna consciousness means taking the instruction of the spiritual master of one's life and soul. And doing that, that's called, and one should be enthusiastic in doing that. And that was Prabhupada. He never gave up. He prepared his whole life to come to the West. And that is Utsaha. Does that clarify?
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah, very nice, Maharaj. Yeah. Thank you.
Something else? Yes. Yeah, we're going to the basis of Krishna consciousness. That my experience is many devotees, they forget these basic things, or they are not trained in these basic things. But this nectar of instruction, we should always keep it with us. it's the basis of our making spiritual advancement. That if we don't know this nectar of instruction or not following, try to follow it, we remain neophytes. That because these are instructions, the first 3-4 verses are instructions for neophytes. And we are all neophytes trying to follow it. Any other question? Okay, then we will continue next week by if Krishna willing. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Bhakti Prabha Maharaj ki jai. Thank you.
Jai.